The delivery driver pressed a package into my hands at the farmer's market and whispered, "Are you Daniel Parker's mother?" When I nodded, he looked around nervously. "I can't keep this secret anymore. Watch it alone." Inside that package, I found proof that my son had never left Texas. For 4 years, I'd believed he was traveling the world for his consulting career. But he'd been locked in a facility less than an hour from my ranch the entire time. And the woman I trusted most, my daughter-in-law Jessica, was the one who put him there. My name is Olivia Parker. I'm 67 years old. And this is the story of how I lost 4 years with my son and how I fought to bring him home. The October morning carried that particular Texas crispness that made me grateful for my light cardigan. At 67, I'd learned to find comfort in familiar rhythms, the Saturday farmer's market in Johnson City, Martha's heirloom tomatoes, the way sunlight painted the hill country gold. But today something felt different. A weight in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. I was examining late-season peaches when I felt it. Not a casual glance, but the kind of watching that raises the hair on your neck. Someone was staring at me with an intensity that made my hands still over the fruit. "Mrs. Parker." I turned. The voice belonged to a man in his 30s wearing a quick-ship deliveries uniform. His face was pale slick with sweat despite the cool morning. His hands trembled as he extended a package wrapped in plain brown paper. "You're Daniel Parker's mother?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. My heart quickened. "I am. Do I know you?" "No, ma'am. My name is Brian Cooper." He glanced around the crowded market like a deer scenting wolves. "I've been making deliveries for someone. Special deliveries. Good money, no questions asked." He pressed the package into my hands with sudden force. His fingers were ice cold. "I saw your son," he said, his voice cracking. "I can't keep this anymore. The truth matters, Mrs. Parker. Whatever they've told you, the truth matters." "Wait." I gripped the package, my pulse hammering in my throat. "What truth? What do you know about Daniel?" "Watch it alone," he said, his eyes wet now, desperate. "Don't tell anyone you have this. Not yet. Not until you understand what you're really dealing with. Son, you need to explain—" "I'm sorry." His voice broke completely. "I tried to do what was right, but I have a family. A wife, 2 little girls who need their daddy. I can't—" He turned and vanished into the crowd before I could grab his arm, before I could demand an explanation for the dread settling like ice water in my gut. I made it to my truck before my hands started shaking. The package sat on the passenger seat as I drove the 10 miles back to the ranch. That plain brown paper concealing whatever had driven a stranger to seek me out with fear written all over his face. My mind turned through possibilities, each one darker than the last. Daniel had been overseas for 4 years. At least that's what Jessica told me. Dubai, Singapore, Tokyo, his consulting career was thriving. She explained it with practiced ease whenever anyone asked. "The modern professional life," she'd say with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "He's doing so well." I'd wanted to believe her. God knows I tried. My husband Robert had passed 3 years ago. That cancer ate him up faster than the doctors predicted. One of his last wishes was that I stay close to Daniel even from a distance. I'd kept that promise, or so I thought, accepting Jessica's updates, her occasional photos of Daniel in hotel lobbies, always too busy to call. But now, with that package burning a hole in the seat beside me, doubt crept in like poison. The ranch appeared at the end of our long gravel drive, 40 acres of limestone and live oak that Robert and I had built our life on. After he passed, the silence had become a weight I carried in every empty corner. The rooms that once echoed with family dinners and Daniel's childhood laughter now held only memories. I carried the package inside. My boots felt heavy on the porch steps. The kitchen table felt like the only right place for this. The same oak surface where Robert had taught Daniel to make his grandmother's pecan pie, where we'd celebrated birthdays and grieved losses. I set the package down and forced my fingers to steady enough to tear the brown paper. Inside, I found 3 things that would shatter everything I thought I knew. A USB drive, small and black. A letter folded once my name written on the outside in handwriting that looked hurried, almost panicked. And a photograph. The photograph stopped my heart. It showed Daniel unmistakably my son, though I barely recognized him. The man in the photo had gaunt hollows in his cheeks where Daniel's easy smile used to live. His eyes carried a haunted look I'd never seen before. He stood in front of a concrete wall, institutional gray. In his hands he held a newspaper, The date was clearly visible April 14th of this year, 6 months ago. But it wasn't just Daniel's appearance that turned my blood to ice water. It wasn't even the institutional setting, though, that was wrong enough. It was the way he held that newspaper, like someone compelled to prove they were still alive, still aware, still trapped wherever this photo was taken. I'd seen photos like this before in old war movies, hostages proving they were still breathing for their captors. This wasn't a business trip. This wasn't Dubai or Singapore or any of the places Jessica had described with such convincing detail. This was something else entirely. I sat in the darkening kitchen long after I'd opened that package, staring at the USB drive like it might detonate. The photograph of Daniel lay beside it, his haunted eyes seeming to watch me from that concrete wall. Outside, the October sun was sliding toward the horizon, painting the hill country in amber and shadow. Robert's old laptop sat in the corner where he'd left it 3 years ago, covered in dust. He'd bought it the year before he got sick. Insisted I learn email so I could stay in touch with Daniel when he traveled. The irony wasn't lost on me as I powered it on. My hands shook as I inserted the drive. 6 video files appeared on screen, each labeled with dates spanning the past 14 months. I clicked the first one. My kitchen materialized on screen, the same room where I sat now, filmed from an angle near the ceiling. The timestamp showed last November, a Tuesday afternoon when I'd been at the cattle auction in Fredericksburg. I watched Jessica enter through the back door. She moved with purpose. Not the casual ease of someone checking on an elderly mother-in-law. She went straight to the cabinet where I kept financial documents, pulled them out, photographed each page with her phone. 4 minutes later, she was gone, locking the door behind her. My breath caught in my throat. The second video showed Robert's study, the room I'd barely touched since he passed. Jessica rifled through the files my husband had meticulously organized, photographing tax returns and property deeds with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. She knew exactly what she was looking for. Video 3 caught her in the basement, searching storage boxes I hadn't opened in years. Video 4, 5, 6. Each one revealed the same methodical pattern. Jessica moving through my home like a professional, systematically documenting anything related to the ranch or our assets. She'd done this over a dozen times in 14 months. Always when I was away. Always careful. Always searching. My initial shock hardened into something colder as I watched her violate the home Robert and I had built together. Every drawer she opened, every file she photographed. It was like watching someone rob a grave. I set the videos aside and unfolded Brian Cooper's letter. His handwriting was cramped urgent, the words tumbling over each other like he'd been racing against time or fear. Mrs. Parker, my name is Brian Cooper. I work for Quick Ship Deliveries. For the past year, I've been making deliveries to a facility outside Austin on behalf of your daughter-in-law. Special deliveries. Good money, no questions asked. That's what I told myself. Just a job. Just following instructions. 3 weeks ago, I saw your son through a window during a delivery run. I recognized him from photos I'd seen at your ranch when I dropped off packages for Mrs. Jessica Parker. He looked at me with this recognition. Not of me, but of the outside world itself. Like a prisoner glimpsing daylight for the first time in years. It haunted me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I had to pause, press my hand to my mouth to keep from crying out. The letter continued. I started asking questions. Carefully. Made some inquiries with contacts in healthcare administration, piecing together what was really happening. Your son isn't traveling overseas, Mrs. Parker. He's been here the entire time, locked away while the world thinks he's building some glamorous career. I don't know all the details, but I know wrong when I see it. His words grew shakier toward the end. I have a family, a wife, 2 little girls who call me daddy and believe I'm a hero. I've been warned about asking questions, about interfering. I know the people involved are powerful, connected. I'm risking everything by giving you this. But your son needs help I can't give. Someone has to know. Someone has to fight for him. The letter ended there, unsigned beyond the typed name, as if even that small act terrified him. My vision blurred with tears. This stranger, this man with 2 little girls, had risked his safety to tell me the truth, and I'd been too blind to see it on my own. I opened the final file on the USB drive with hands that had gone numb. A medical report materialized on screen, clinical and precise. Meadowbrook Treatment Center, 2847 Riverside Drive, Austin, Texas, patient. Daniel James Parker, date of birth, March 15, 1990. Diagnosis, severe traumatic brain injury resulting in significant cognitive impairment requiring ongoing supervised care and rehabilitation. Legal guardian Jessica Morrison Parker. All medical decisions and visiting privileges subject to guardian approval. Admission date. The numbers swam before my eyes. I had to read them 3 times. 4 years, 1 month, and 12 days ago. One day after Daniel had supposedly left for his first overseas assignment in Dubai. One day after Jessica had driven him to the airport with tears in her eyes, promising to take care of me while he was gone. He'd never left Texas at all. For 4 years, while I'd been telling neighbors my son was building his career overseas, while I'd been accepting Jessica's updates and occasional photos of Daniel in hotel lobbies, he'd been locked away in a facility less than an hour from this kitchen. Close enough that I could have driven there any Saturday after the farmer's market. Jessica had taken legal guardianship while I'd been believing her lies. She'd locked him away, stolen his life, and for 4 years she'd been systematically searching my home, photographing documents, hunting for something. But what I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake replaying 4 years of conversations, every excuse Jessica had offered, every deflection, every moment she'd made me doubt my own instincts. By the time dawn broke over the hill country, I understood the truth. I hadn't been stupid. I'd been systematically gaslighted. The video calls had always felt off. Jessica scheduled them carefully, always when she knew I was alone. Usually Sunday evenings when the ranch felt emptiest. Daniel would appear on screen in what looked like hotel rooms. Neutral walls, generic furniture, spaces that could have been anywhere. He looked tired, distracted, apologetic. "Sorry I can't talk long, Mom. Big presentation tomorrow. The time difference makes it hard to catch you. I'll call next week, I promise." I believed him because I wanted to, because the alternative that something was deeply wrong felt impossible. Now I saw the truth. Those hotel rooms were staged, likely inside Meadowbrook itself. The calls weren't live. They were pre-recorded clips. Daniel reading from a script. Someone just off camera making sure he complied. The emails had been easier for Jessica. She controlled Daniel's accounts. Sent messages stamped from Dubai, Singapore, Tokyo, full of convincing details about clients I couldn't verify, projects I didn't understand, the kind of busy professional life I'd always wanted for my son. And the photos, God, the photos. Daniel in airports, conference rooms, hotel lobbies. I'd taken them as proof of success. Now I knew they could have been old, edited, or not even him at all. Just someone similar enough in grainy phone images. Whenever doubt surfaced, and it had more often than I wanted to admit, Jessica was ready. "Mom, you're grieving Robert. Confusion is normal at your age. Daniel's under incredible pressure. He doesn't want to worry you. His work is confidential. He can't share details even with family." She delivered every lie with patience and concern, always smiling, though I now realized her eyes never matched. She'd isolated me from my son while convincing me it was Daniel's choice. The worst memories were of the children. Sophie asking softly, "Grandma, when is Daddy coming home?" Jacob clutching Daniel's old toy truck, confused by the silence. Jessica's smooth answers followed every time. "Daddy's very busy, sweetheart, but he loves you so much." Each moment had hurt. Now they shattered me. Daniel had been less than an hour away for 4 years, locked away while his children grew up believing he'd abandoned them. Sophie was 9 now. She'd been 5 when her father left for Dubai. 4 years of wondering why Daddy didn't call, why he missed her birthday, why he wasn't there when she learned to ride a bike. Jacob was 6. He barely remembered his father at all, just fragments. A laugh, strong hands lifting him high, the smell of his cologne. I thought about all those Sundays when Jessica dropped the kids off at the ranch, how Sophie had grown quieter over the years. How she watched me sometimes with eyes too old for her face. How Jacob had stopped asking when Daddy was coming home. I'd failed them. Failed my son. Failed my grandchildren. Ready to pretend. Ready to hide what I knew. Ready to protect my grandchildren while I figured out what to do next. Jessica stepped out wearing a tailored blazer, and that smile I now saw for what it was. A mask. carefully constructed, perfectly maintained. "Morning, Mom," she said warmly. "Thank you for watching them. I have errands in Austin." Austin, where my son was locked away. "Anytime," I replied, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "They're my grandkids." Sophie and Jacob tumbled out of the car. Jacob threw himself against my legs, gripping that old toy truck. Sophie stayed back, studying my face with those two knowing eyes. Jessica lingered. I felt the shift. This wasn't just a drop-off. "I've been helping Daniel with some investment questions," she said casually. "Tax planning, estate things, boring stuff." She paused, watching me. Robert might have kept copies of financial documents, property records, trust papers. "You were always so organized." There it was, the real reason she'd searched my house for over a year. "I'm not sure what I have," I said slowly. "I can look." Relief flashed across her face before she hid it. "That would be wonderful. No rush." After she left, I spent the day with the kids. We baked cookies in Robert's kitchen the way he'd once taught Daniel. Jacob talked nonstop about his Lego castle, his new friend at school, the frog he'd found in the yard. Olivia stayed quiet, measuring ingredients carefully, watching me. Later, while Jacob raced across the yard, Sophie sat beside me on the porch steps. "Grandma," her voice was barely a whisper. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." She looked toward the yard where Jacob was playing, making sure he couldn't hear. "I know Daddy isn't really on a business trip." My heart stopped. "What do you mean, honey?" "I was only 5 when he left, but I remember that day." Her small hands twisted together. "I heard Mom on the phone, talking about a facility and doctors. It didn't sound like a business trip." Tears welled in her eyes. "When I asked her about it, she got really mad. She said if I told anyone you or Grandpa Robert or anyone, Daddy would go away forever, and it would be my fault." Sophie looked up at me, 9 years old, carrying a secret that had poisoned her childhood. "I've been so scared, Grandma. I thought if I said anything, I'd never see Daddy again. So I stayed quiet for 4 whole years, and I felt so bad, like I was lying to everyone." I pulled her into my arms. "Oh, sweetheart, none of this is your fault. You were just a little girl. Your mother lied to you and threatened you. You did nothing wrong." "But I knew," she sobbed. "I knew something was wrong and I didn't say anything. Maybe if I'd been braver, Daddy would have come home sooner." "No." I held her tighter. "You were 5 years old. You loved your father so much that you carried this terrible secret to keep him safe. That's not wrong, baby. That's brave. But I should have—" "You don't have to carry it anymore," I whispered. "I know the truth now, and I'm going to bring your daddy home." Sophie cried against my shoulder, 4 years of fear and guilt pouring out. When Jessica returned at 5 o'clock perfectly on time, Sophie was calm again. But I saw the way my granddaughter's shoulders had lifted, the weight she'd been carrying just a little lighter now. "Thank you again," Jessica said, her mask firmly in place. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I watched the BMW disappear down the drive, the children waving from the back window. My chest ached with everything I couldn't tell them yet. But soon, very soon. Monday morning, I remembered something I'd pushed aside in the fog of grief 3 years ago. A small brass key in Robert's desk drawer, labeled Box 247. I'd meant to deal with it after he passed, but I couldn't face more paperwork, more reminders of everything I'd lost. Now I understood why Robert had left it where I'd be sure to find it. The drive to Austin took 45 minutes. Hill country stretched out on either side of the highway, live oaks and limestone bluffs catching the morning sun. Robert had loved this drive. He'd roll down the window, let the wind tangle his silver hair, and tell me stories about the land, about his grandmother who'd grown up in Blanco County when it was still wild. I thought about his hands now, strong, capable, always moving. He'd seen things I'd missed. He always had. The bank in downtown Austin was quiet, sterile. The vault manager led me through 2 locked doors into a room lined with numbered boxes. Box 247 sat at eye level, small and unassuming. The key turned smoothly. Inside was a single manila folder, thick with documents. On top in Robert's handwriting, Parker Family Trust, confidential. My hands shook as I opened it. The trust document itself was dense. pages of legal language I'd need a lawyer to parse. But beneath it, folded carefully, was a letter, handwritten, dated 6 months before Robert died. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and if I'm right about what I suspect, you're going to need this. I've been watching Jessica for a long time, longer than you realize. I've seen the lies, small at first, then bigger, money that doesn't add up, stories that shift when you press on them. The way she looks at Daniel, not with love, but with calculation. I know you think I'm being paranoid. You've always seen the best in people. It's one of the things I love most about you. But Olivia, this time I need you to trust me. I've set up this trust. It protects Daniel and the children. Everything, the ranch, the land, all our assets is in an irrevocable trust for Daniel and his children with you as the trustee. If anything happens to Daniel, if Jessica tries to control the estate or claim guardianship over finances, this trust stops her. She gets nothing. I've worked with Ted Sullivan downtown. He's solid, Olivia. He knows what to do. Fight for our son. Don't trust the obvious answers. Dig deeper. You're stronger than you think you are. I love you. I always will. Robert. I sat in that vault room for a long time, the letter trembling in my hands. The air conditioning hummed. Somewhere down the hall a phone rang. Robert had known. 3 years ago, when cancer was eating him from the inside and he could barely stand without help, he'd seen what I couldn't. He'd prepared for this. Built a fortress around our son and grandchildren, brick by legal brick, and left me the key. I thought about Jessica's smile yesterday, the way she'd asked about trust papers with that carefully casual tone. She'd been searching for this for 4 years, tearing through our home looking for the one thing that could stop her. And Robert had made sure she'd never find it. 20 minutes later, I burst through the door of Ted Sullivan's office in downtown Austin, the trust document pressed against my chest like armor. "We need to talk," I said, "and then we need to get my son back." Ted looked up from his desk, startled, then stood immediately when he saw my face. "Olivia, what's—" I dropped the package on his mahogany desk. The USB drive clattered against the wood. Brian Cooper's letter, the photographs, the medical report from Meadowbrook. All of it spilled out between us. "My son never left Texas," I said. "Jessica's had him locked up in a facility outside Austin for 4 years under guardianship, and she's been tearing through my house looking for Robert's trust." Ted's face darkened as he examined each piece. He picked up the photo of Daniel Gaunt, hollow-eyed, holding that newspaper dated 6 months ago, and his jaw tightened. "Robert came to see me 3 years ago," Ted said quietly, "right after his diagnosis. He said he'd been watching Jessica, seeing things that didn't add up. He was worried, terrified actually, that if anything happened to Daniel, Jessica would try to control everything." He tapped the trust document I'd brought from the bank. "This trust is ironclad. It supersedes everything else. Will's powers of attorney, guardianship claims. Jessica has no access to your assets or Daniel's inheritance. The ranch, the land, everything stays protected for Daniel and the children with you as trustee." Relief washed over me, but Ted's expression remained grim. "But if what you're showing me is true, Olivia, Jessica's committed serious crimes. Guardianship fraud, false imprisonment, possibly worse." He paused, studying the medical report. "We need to move carefully here. If she realizes you know, she could destroy evidence, move Daniel, anything." Something in his tone made me uneasy, but I pushed it aside. "What do I do?" Ted leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "First, we gather more evidence, document everything." He pulled out a business card from his desk drawer. "If you're serious about this, and I think you have to be, you need someone who can dig deep without being detected." He slid the card across the desk. "Derek Stone, private investigator, former FBI, guardianship fraud specialist." "Derek specializes in cases like this," Ted said. "If anyone can find the evidence you need, it's him." I took the card. The name felt solid in my hand. Ted cleared his throat. "There was a journalist a few years back, Rebecca Boyd. She investigated guardianship fraud cases across Texas, published an article about predatory guardianships, facilities working with corrupt lawyers to drain estates. What happened to her?" Ted's hand trembled slightly as he closed the folder. "She disappeared 48 hours after publication. 2 weeks later, hit and run. Driver never found." The air in the office felt suddenly colder. The case was never solved. Ted said quietly. I looked at him across the desk. My friend of 40 years, the man who'd stood beside Robert through cancer, who'd held my hand at the funeral and promised to protect what Robert had built. I'm not backing down, he said. Whatever it takes. Ted nodded slowly. Then call Derek, tonight. And Olivia. He met my eyes. Be careful. If Jessica's involved with the kind of people I think she is, they don't hesitate when someone gets in their way. I left Ted's office with Derek Stone's card in my pocket and a weight settling over my shoulders. The afternoon sun was harsh. Downtown Austin traffic hummed around me. Somewhere in this city, less than an hour from my ranch, my son was locked away. Had been for 4 years, 1 month and 12 days. Close enough to visit. Close enough to save. If only I'd known to look. I sat in my truck in the parking garage for a long time. Robert's letter pressed against my heart. The trust document on the seat beside me. Finally, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number on Derek Stone's card. He answered on the second ring. This is Stone. Mr. Stone, my name is Olivia Parker. Ted Sullivan gave me your number. I need your help finding my son. There was a pause. Then tell me everything. And I did. Derek Stone arrived at the ranch after dark. I'd been pacing the kitchen for hours. Robert's letter spread on the table, the USB drive sitting there like a loaded gun. When headlights swept across the driveway, I moved toward the door. But Derek didn't knock. Instead, I watched through the window as he circled the house first, moving along the fence line with some kind of handheld device, checking the porch, the barn, even the old tractor shed. Only then did he knock. Derek Stone, he said when I opened the door. He was in his 50s, compact and weathered with the kind of stillness that comes from years of watching and waiting. I didn't find any surveillance devices, he said without preamble, but let's assume you're being monitored anyway. He sat at Robert's kitchen table and went through everything methodically. The videos of Jessica searching my home, Brian Cooper's letter, the medical report, the photograph of Daniel. His face remained expressionless until I mentioned Meadowbrook Treatment Center. Meadowbrook, he repeated slowly. Outside Austin. You know it? I know of facilities like it. Derek set down the photo of Daniel. His eyes were hard, calculating. Mrs. Parker, this is bigger than a family fraud case. These operations don't run on their own. They need infrastructure, complicit doctors, falsified reports, legal cover. He paused. And they need money. A lot of it. What are you saying, Rebecca Boyd? Derek's voice was flat, careful. That hit and run Ted mentioned, that wasn't some panicked family member. That was professional, clean. The kind of thing you hire out when you need someone gone permanently. The word hung in the air between us. Professional. You think... I couldn't finish the sentence. I think Meadowbrook might be connected to something larger. Money laundering. Organized crime. I don't know yet. But guardianship fraud is a perfect front. You've got vulnerable people, complex legal protections, and nobody asks questions about a traumatic brain injury patient. Derek pulled out a small notebook, sketched out security protocols. From now on, cash only. No discussions over the phone. Don't trust anyone you haven't personally vetted. He stood to leave, paused at the door. One more thing. That package you got the delivery driver who brought it. Brian Cooper. Find out what happened to him. His eyes met mine. Men like that don't usually walk away. Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Unknown number. The text was short. Stop asking questions about Daniel Parker. This is your only warning. I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold in my hand. No name, no signature. Just the threat bare and blunt. I forwarded it to Derek without responding. He called back within 5 minutes. Good, he said. Don't delete it. This confirms they're monitoring you. It also means we're close to something they want protected. What do I do? Nothing. Let them think the warning worked. Keep your head down. Derek's voice hardened. And Olivia, watch for anyone approaching you with paperwork. That's usually the next move. Tuesday afternoon, Jessica showed up unannounced. I was fixing fence posts near the barn when her BMW rolled up the gravel drive, dust billowing behind it. She stepped out wearing a tailored blazer and that smile I'd once believed was genuine. Mom, I was in the area. Thought I'd stop by. She held up a manila folder. I've got some forms. Just medical authorization paperwork for Daniel's care. Standard stuff. I need your signature as next of kin." She laid the folder on the hood of her car, flipping it open with practiced ease. The forms looked official, dense paragraphs of legal language, signature lines highlighted in yellow. I didn't touch them. "I'll have Ted look these over first." Her smile tightened. "Your lawyer, Mom, it's just standard paperwork." "I don't sign anything without legal review," I said. "That's common sense." For just a heartbeat, something flickered across her face. Calculation. Anger. Maybe both. Then the mask slid back into place. "Of course. Take your time." She left the folder on the hood, climbed back into the BMW, drove away without another word. I scanned every page and emailed them to Ted within the hour. His response took longer than it should have. 3 hours passed. I called his office twice, got voicemail. It wasn't until nearly 8 o'clock that night that Ted finally called back. "Olivia, thank God you didn't sign those." "What are they?" "Medical power of attorney," Ted said, but buried in the language it would give Jessica's attorney access to all your medical records, including psychiatric evaluations, cognitive assessments, everything. The blood drained from my face. "They could cherry-pick anything to argue you're incompetent," Ted continued. "She's building a case against you." "For what?" Ted's voice was grim. "I'm afraid it's worse than that. She's trying to do to you what she did to Daniel." Wednesday morning at 9:15, an express courier delivered a thick envelope. Petition for competency evaluation was stamped across the front in bold letters. I opened it at the kitchen table, Robert's coffee mug still sitting where he'd left it 3 years ago. The words swam before my eyes. Jessica Morrison Parker, acting out of concern for the welfare of Olivia Parker, age 67, petitions the court to determine whether Mrs. Parker is capable of managing her personal and financial affairs. Concerns include frequent memory lapses, missed medical appointments, paranoid accusations regarding family matters, confusion about son's whereabouts and well-being, inability to manage ranch operations safely, hearing scheduled 18 days from today. The petition cited doctors I'd seen once for routine checkups. Their words twisted into something unrecognizable. A forgotten dentist appointment became cognitive decline. A misplaced invoice became proof of incompetence. At the bottom, in stark black text, "If found incompetent, petitioner requests appointment as legal guardian with full authority over personal and financial decisions." My hands shook as I read it again. If she won, Jessica would control everything. The ranch, the bank accounts, my freedom. She could lock me away in a facility just like Daniel. She could take Sophie and Jacob and disappear, and I'd have no legal standing to stop her. I called Ted. He answered on the first ring, and that's when I noticed he didn't sound surprised. "I know," he said. "I just got the notification from the court." "How is she moving this fast?" "She's acting faster than I expected." There was something off in his tone, something too smooth, too rehearsed. "We need evidence, Olivia. Solid, irrefutable evidence, within 18 days. Without it, we're fighting blind." I thought about Derek's warning. Don't trust anyone you haven't personally vetted. Ted had built Robert's trust. He'd been our family lawyer for 40 years. But now, sitting in the silence after his words, I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd known this petition was coming before the courier ever knocked on my door. 18 days, I said quietly. 18 days, Ted confirmed. "I'll start drafting a response. You focus on staying calm, staying visible, documenting everything. Don't give them ammunition." After I hung up, I sat at that table for a long time. The petition spread in front of me like a death sentence. 18 days to save my son and myself. 18 days before Jessica won. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a voice I couldn't silence anymore whispered, "What if the man you're trusting to save you is the one helping her destroy you?" Derek posed as a relative exploring care options for his mother with dementia. He called me from the parking lot after his tour of Meadowbrook. "The facility is upscale on the outside," he said. "Shiny brochures, professional sales pitch, but the actual care units," he paused. "Minimal staff, old equipment, doors with electronic locks, security cameras everywhere." "Did you see Daniel?" "No, but I saw enough." Derek's voice was tight. "I counted at least 20 patients in the main wing. Most of them looked completely lucid, alert, aware, not the kind of people who need locked door supervision." He'd gotten the name of the attending physician. Dr. Howard Pierce. I ran his background, Derek said. He had his medical license suspended in California 6 years ago for falsifying patient records. Now he's the chief medical officer at Meadowbrook, signing off on guardianship cases. My stomach turned. So he's corrupt. Or coerced. Or both. Derek exhaled. I'm going to dig deeper. See if I can find someone on the inside willing to talk. Be careful. Always am. 3 days later, Derek called with news. I found someone. A nurse at Meadowbrook. Rachel Morgan. She's scared, but she's willing to talk. Can we meet at your place tomorrow, 6 a.m.? The woman who sat at my kitchen table the next morning looked exhausted. Rachel Morgan was maybe 30, with dark circles under her eyes and hands that wouldn't stop trembling around her coffee mug. Derek stood by the window scanning the driveway, his body tense. I can't testify in court, Rachel said immediately. I have a daughter. I saw what happened to that journalist. We're not asking you to go public, Derek said gently. Just tell us what you know. Rachel slid a USB drive across the table. Daniel Parker is listed as severe traumatic brain injury with cognitive impairment, she said. But the chart notes don't match the diagnosis. She pulled out printed records, her finger tracing the lines. Cognitive assessments show normal function, vital signs stable, communication clear. There's nothing in his actual medical data that supports the guardianship claim. Then how? Dr. Pierce signs off on whatever Jessica requests. Rachel's voice hardened. Minimal contact orders, no outside calls, restricted visitation. He rubber stamps everything without actually evaluating the patient. She handed me another document. Billing records. Monthly fees $22,300. Actual care costs, maybe $6,200. The rest disappears into administrative fees and care management charges. I stared at the numbers. Over 4 years, Jessica had funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars through Meadowbrook, claiming it was for Daniel's care. There are emails, Rachel continued, opening her laptop. The screen showed correspondence between Jessica and Dr. Pierce. Transactional, cold, maintain current status, extend care plan indefinitely, no changes to visitation protocols. And it's not just Daniel. Rachel's voice dropped. There are dozens of cases like his. People who could go home. Families who don't know they're even there. She looked at me with haunted eyes. It's a system, Mrs. Parker. Meadowbrook isn't just one bad guardian. It's infrastructure. 10 days before the hearing, Jessica arranged a video call with Daniel. She set it up in her living room. Sophie and Jacob sat on either side of me on the couch, bouncing with anticipation. Jessica hovered near the laptop, her smile bright and practiced. Ready, kids? Your dad's going to be so excited to see you. The screen flickered, and there he was, Daniel. Thinner than I remembered, older in the eyes, but when he looked into the camera there was something I hadn't expected. Clarity. His gaze was sharp, focused, alert. Hey, Mom! His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it much, but it was steady. Daniel? My throat tightened. Son, Sophie squealed and waved frantically. Daddy, I got an A on my spelling test. Jacob pressed his face close to the screen. I can count to 100 now. Want to hear? Daniel smiled. Tired, worn, but genuine. I definitely want to hear. Go ahead, buddy. As Jacob counted and Sophie chattered about school, Daniel asked the right questions, remembered details, responded with the kind of attention that could only come from a mind fully present. He wasn't confused. He wasn't impaired. He was aware. And then his eyes locked onto mine. It was deliberate, intentional, a blink pattern. Slow then fast, then slow again. His fingers tapped lightly against his chest. Just once. A gesture so small Jessica wouldn't notice from her angle near the door. The micro-expression that crossed his face lasted less than a second. But I caught it. I need you to see me. I miss the ranch, Mom, Daniel said. His voice soft but measured, his eyes never leaving mine. I think about it every day. 4 years is a long time. 4 years. He knew. He was tracking time. He understood what had been done to him. Jessica shifted at the edge of the frame, her smile tightening. Daniel gets a little nostalgic sometimes. The doctors say it's normal. But Daniel didn't look away from me. How's the barn, the fences, the cattle? Everything's waiting for you, I said carefully. He nodded once, deliberate. Good. That's real good. The call ended a few minutes later. Jessica closed the laptop with a click. I'm glad you got to see him, she said, her expression unreadable. But I sat there frozen while the kids ran off to play, and understood with absolute certainty. My son wasn't sick. He was imprisoned. Brian Cooper is dead. I'd been standing at the kitchen sink washing dinner dishes. My hands went still in the soapy water. What happened? Single vehicle accident on Highway 290, 3 days after he delivered that package to you. Derek's voice was flat, professional. Police called it driver fatigue. You don't believe that? No. Derek paused. It was too clean. No skid marks, no signs of braking. The vehicle burned completely destroyed any evidence of tampering. No witnesses. My legs felt weak. I sank into a chair. Brian Cooper drove that route 1,000 times, Derek continued. And suddenly he veers off the road at 70 miles an hour into a concrete barrier. He didn't need to say it. I heard it anyway. Not an accident. A hit. Made to look like one. Brian had a wife and 2 little girls, Derek said quietly. They're terrified, Olivia. His widow wouldn't talk to me. She just kept saying, we don't know anything. Leave us alone. Someone threatened them. Someone made sure Brian's family understood what happens when you talk. I thought about the man who'd approached me at the farmer's market, the way he'd glanced over his shoulder, the urgency in his voice. Someone needs to know. He'd known the risk. He'd done it anyway. And they'd killed him for it. There's more, Derek said. I've been digging into Meadowbrook's ownership. The facility is owned by a shell corporation called Silver Point Holdings, registered in the Cayman Islands, offshore. He continued, his voice grim. Silver Point owns 7 facilities across Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. The financial patterns look like money laundering, Olivia. We're talking about millions moving through these facilities every month. What do you mean? Patients with no family oversight. Guardianship cases where estates get drained into shell accounts. Clean money coming out the other side. My stomach turned. You're saying this isn't just guardianship fraud. I'm saying we've stumbled into something much bigger. Organized crime uses these operations as fronts. Elder abuse, guardianship fraud, all of it funneling cash through legitimate-looking healthcare businesses. Derek's voice hardened. Rebecca Boyd figured it out. That's why they killed her. Brian Cooper saw something, so they killed him too. And Daniel's a cash cow. Jessica gets monthly fees for his care, probably $20,000-$30,000 a month from whatever trust she thought she'd control. Multiply that by how many patients Meadowbrook has under questionable guardianships, and you're looking at a serious revenue stream. I gripped the phone tighter. What do? We find proof, inside testimony, financial records, something that ties Jessica to Meadowbrook's operation and exposes the whole network. He exhaled slowly. But Olivia, you need to understand we're not just fighting Jessica anymore. We're up against people who kill whistleblowers and make it look accidental. People with resources, connections, and a lot to lose. 8 days, I said quietly. 8 days, Derek confirmed. We have suspicions, but we need evidence solid enough to walk into that courtroom and blow this open. And people are dying for that evidence. Yes, I stood alone in the kitchen long after Derek hung up, the silence pressing in around me. Somewhere out there, Brian Cooper's widow was putting 2 little girls to bed, lying to them about why their daddy wasn't coming home. Somewhere in Austin, my son sat in a facility masquerading as care, lucid and aware, counting the days of his imprisonment. And somewhere in the shadows, the people who'd orchestrated all of it were watching, waiting, ready to eliminate anyone who got too close to the truth. 4 days before the hearing, Derek spread documents across my kitchen table like a general planning a siege. I followed the money, Olivia. It goes deeper than we thought. He showed me bank records, corporate filings, wire transfers moving through shell companies with names like Silver Point Capital Management and Clearwater Medical Holdings, money flowing in from guardianship estates, flowing out to accounts in the Cayman Islands, Panama, the British Virgin Islands. Meadowbrook bills families and estates $20,000 to $30,000 a month per patient, Derek said. Multiply that by how many patients they have under questionable guardianships, 50 maybe more across their 7 facilities, and you're looking at over $1 million a month moving through the system. Where does it go? That's what I'm still tracing. But the patterns match money laundering operations I investigated at the Bureau. Dirty money comes in as medical fees, gets cleaned through a legitimate healthcare business, comes out the other side as consulting fees, real estate investments, you name it. He tapped a photograph. Dr. Pierce shaking hands with a man in an expensive suit outside a Houston restaurant. Pierce has been on Meadowbrook's payroll for 6 years. Before that, he had his medical license suspended in California for falsifying patient records. Derek leaned back. I reached out to contacts at the bureau. They recognized the pattern immediately. He slid another photograph across the table. Surveillance images of men in expensive suits meeting outside a Houston office building. Sinaloa Cartel Olivia. Meadowbrook is a money laundering operation. Border states, high-value patients, fake medical fees to legitimize cash flow. The words were too big to fully process. Dr. Pierce was recruited 6 years ago to provide medical legitimacy, Derek continued. He signs off on anything they need, diagnoses, guardianships, care plans, no questions asked. And Jessica, she probably stumbled into it, needed a guardianship facility, found Meadowbrook. They saw an opportunity. She controls Daniel's money, they get a legitimate cover. Derek's expression darkened. Brian Cooper's accident cartel cleanup crew. Rebecca Boyd's hit and run, same. Professional killings made to look accidental. He pulled out his phone, showed me photos he'd taken the day before. Your ranch. I found surveillance equipment yesterday. Professional grade. The images showed tiny cameras mounted on fence posts, audio devices tucked into the barn eaves, a tracking beacon under my truck's rear bumper. They're monitoring everything, Derek said. He reached into his jacket and placed his service weapon on the table. The metal gleamed dully in the morning light. I'm not carrying this for show. From now on, assume every move is being watched. 3 days before the hearing, Derek arrived at dawn, his face grim. We've got a problem. A big one. He dropped a folder in front of me. I ran financials on everyone involved in your case, including Ted Sullivan. Bank statements, transaction records, wire transfer receipts. My eyes caught on one entry. $75,000, received 3 weeks ago from a shell company that traced back to an offshore account controlled by Jessica. No, I whispered. Ted's been her mole, Derek said. Each piece of evidence another nail in the coffin of a friendship I'd trusted my entire adult life. Phone records. Ted called Jessica within an hour of every meeting with me. Financial transfers. Multiple payments over 4 years totaling $280,000. Timeline. Brian Cooper died 24 hours after I told Ted about the package delivery. Ted leaked Brian's identity, Derek said. Jessica told the cartel. They killed him. Every strategy session, every piece of evidence we'd discussed, every plan we'd made. Jessica had known it all. She'd been 10 steps ahead because the man I'd trusted to save us was feeding her every move. Why? My voice cracked. Why would he? Derek pulled out a small digital recorder. I confronted him yesterday with backup from a Travis County deputy. He broke down pretty quick once he knew we had the bank records. He pressed play. Ted's voice came through the speaker, panicked and raw. I didn't have a choice. She knew things. Mistakes I made years ago. My son, he got into trouble. Drugs, gambling debts. I needed money for rehab to pay off the people threatening him. Jessica found out somehow. She had proof of some financial irregularities I'd done years back. She said she'd report me, get my son arrested unless I helped. I helped her draft the guardianship documents 4 years ago. I gave her the trust templates so she'd know what to search for. I leaked Brian Cooper's name after Olivia told me about the package. A long pause. Ragged breathing. I sabotaged the discovery motions. I was supposed to destroy Olivia's defense from the inside. I never thought people would die. I swear I never thought. But when Brian died, I knew. I knew what I'd done, and I couldn't stop. She had too much on me. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Derek stopped the recording. Ted Sullivan was arrested this morning. Conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, fraud. He's flipping plea deal in exchange for testimony against Jessica. 40 years of friendship. Gone. Ted had held Robert's hand when the cancer got bad. He'd stood beside me at the funeral, promised to protect what Robert had built, and all along he'd been helping Jessica destroy it. You need a new lawyer, Derek said. Immediately. The hearing's in 3 days. He slid a business card across the table. Best litigator in Austin. She specializes in guardianship cases. and she doesn't lose. That evening I found 3 cattle dead in the west pasture, foam around their mouths, poisoned. On the fence post nearest the bodies, someone had burned a symbol into the wood, a stylized letter, crude but deliberate. Derek arrived within 20 minutes of my call, his face grim as he photographed the symbol. "This is a warning," he said quietly. "They know the hearing's in 3 days." An hour later, I found the second threat on my porch, a photograph of me walking into the courthouse during a pre-trial meeting, taken from across the street. The accompanying text was simple: "Accidents happen in parking lots." Derek immediately called his FBI contacts. "We need protection at the courthouse. These people don't make idle threats." The night before the hearing, I sat alone in Robert's study. His desk was exactly as he'd left it 3 years ago. Pens in the cup, reading glasses folded beside the lamp, a photo of Daniel at age 10 holding a fish he'd caught in the creek. I held Robert's letter in my hands, the paper soft from being read so many times. "Fight for our son, Olivia. You're stronger than you think you are." I thought about Brian Cooper, who'd risked everything to deliver that package, and paid with his life. About Rachel Morgan, terrified but brave enough to testify. About Derek, who'd walked away from retirement to stand between me and a cartel. About Ted, whose 40 years of friendship had been a lie built on greed and fear. Tomorrow it would all come to a head. Tomorrow I'd face Jessica in court and expose everything she'd built. Tomorrow I'd fight for my son. Sophie appeared in the doorway. She should have been asleep. "Grandma, are you okay?" I opened my arms and she climbed into my lap. 9 years old and far too wise for her age. "I'm scared," she whispered. "What if they don't believe us? What if we can't bring Daddy home?" I held her close. "Sweetheart, sometimes we have to fight for the people we love, even when we're scared, even when it's hard. But what if we lose? Then we get up and fight again," I said. "Because giving up isn't an option, not when it comes to family." Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Grandma, you're brave, just like Daddy." My eyes filled with tears. "You're pretty brave yourself, sweetheart." After I tucked her back into bed, I stood at the window, looking out over the ranch Robert and I had built. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, I'd walk into that courthouse and face the woman who'd stolen my son. Tomorrow, justice would finally have its day. But tonight, I allowed myself to grieve. For the 4 years stolen. For the lies believed. For the mother I'd been who'd failed to see the truth. Tomorrow, I'd be the warrior Robert knew I could be. The morning of the hearing was cold and tense. I woke at 4 a.m., my heart already racing. For a moment, lying in the darkness of my bedroom, I could pretend this was just another day. That I'd get up, make coffee check on the cattle. That my son wasn't locked away in a facility an hour from here. That I wasn't about to walk into a courtroom and fight for both our lives. But the petition sat on my nightstand. A constant reminder. 18 days had become 0. Today was the day. I dressed carefully. Not the work clothes I usually wore around the ranch, but the navy suit I'd bought for Robert's funeral 3 years ago. The one I'd sworn I'd never wear again because it reminded me of the worst day of my life. But today required armor, and this was the only kind I had. In the kitchen, I made coffee with shaking hands. Robert's mug sat in its usual spot. I picked it up, running my fingers over the chip on the rim from the time Daniel had knocked it off the counter when he was 7. "I'm going to bring him home," I whispered to the empty room, to Robert's ghost, to the silence that had lived here too long. "I promise you, I'm going to bring our boy home." The sunrise painted the hill country in shades of gold and pink, beautiful, indifferent to the battle ahead. Derek's truck pulled up at 5:30 exactly as planned. He got out wearing a suit I'd never seen him in. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked like the FBI agent he used to be instead of the weathered private investigator he'd become. "Ready?" he asked. I picked up my purse, Robert's letter folded inside, the trust document in a protective sleeve. As I'll ever be. The drive to Austin took 45 minutes. Derek drove in silence, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors, looking for tails, for threats, for the cartel surveillance team he knew was out there somewhere. "Maria will meet us at the courthouse at 7, he said. "She's been preparing all night. We've got Rachel's testimony, the financial records, Ted's confession, and the video evidence. Will it be enough? Derek's jaw tightened. It has to be. I watched the hill country roll past. The same landscape Robert and I had driven through 1,000 times. Going to town for supplies. Visiting Daniel when he was young. Building a life. And I thought about how quickly that life could be stolen. How Jessica had done exactly that, stolen 4 years, 1 month and 12 days from my son while I believed her lies. No more. Today, the lies ended. Travis County Courthouse rose like a fortress in downtown Austin. All limestone and authority. The kind of building designed to make you feel small. But I didn't feel small as I stepped out of Derek's truck. I felt like a mother about to fight for her child. And nothing, not Jessica, not her lawyers, not the cartel watching from the shadows was going to stop me. Derek appeared at my side almost immediately, his hand resting near his jacket where I knew his weapon was holstered. "Stay close to me," he said quietly. "They're here." I followed his gaze. Men in casual clothes, positioned too deliberately around the courthouse perimeter, watching the entrances. One leaned against a lamppost, another sat in a sedan with the engine running. My skin prickled. "FBI?" I asked. "Deployed inside and around the building. My contacts came through." Derek's voice was low. "Let's get you inside." Maria Ortiz met us in the courthouse lobby. She was everything Derek had promised. Sharp-eyed, no-nonsense, with a briefcase that looked like it weighed 40 pounds. She wore a burgundy suit that screamed competence and an expression that said she didn't lose. "Mrs. Parker," she shook my hand firmly. "I've reviewed everything Derek sent me. We have a strong case. Very strong. But Jessica's lawyers are good. Sharon Caldwell is one of the best defense attorneys in Texas. She'll fight dirty." Maria's eyes hardened. "So will we." We walked through security, past the marble columns and into the hallways that smelled of old wood and justice delayed. The courtroom was on the 3rd floor. As we approached, I saw them. Jessica stood outside the doors with 3 lawyers. Sharon Caldwell wore a suit that probably cost more than my monthly ranch expenses. She was talking on her phone, gesturing sharply. The 2 junior lawyers flanked her like sentries. And Jessica? Jessica wore a navy suit almost identical to mine. Her hair pulled back in a modest bun, makeup understated, the picture of a concerned daughter-in-law doing her painful duty. She glanced at me once. For just a heartbeat, I saw it. The calculation, the cold assessment. Then the mask slid into place. Worry, sadness, perfect performance. "Mom," she said, moving toward me, "I'm so sorry it's come to this. I just want what's best for you." "Don't." Maria stepped between us. "No contact with my client." Sharon Caldwell ended her call. "Counselor, shall we keep this professional?" "Absolutely," Maria said. "Starting with your client staying away from mine." The tension crackled between them like electricity. At exactly 9 o'clock, the bailiff called, "All rise." Judge Helen Crawford entered from her chambers. She was 60-something with steel-gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her face had the kind of lines that came from decades of hearing lies and half-truths. Her reputation preceded her. Fair, meticulous, and utterly intolerant of games. She took her seat behind the bench, surveyed the courtroom with the measured gaze of someone who'd seen every trick in the book, picked up her gavel. "This court will come to order." Her voice was clear, authoritative, the kind that didn't need to be raised to command attention. "We are here regarding the petition for competency evaluation of Olivia Parker, age 67. We will hear opening statements." She looked at Jessica's table. "Ms. Caldwell, you may begin." Sharon Caldwell stood, smoothed her suit jacket, approached the bench with the confidence of someone who thought victory was assured. "Your Honor," she began, her voice carrying practiced empathy, "we are here today because of serious concerns regarding Olivia Parker's declining mental capacity." She paced before the bench, her expensive heels clicking against the tile. Memory lapses, missed appointments, paranoid accusations against a devoted daughter-in-law who has sacrificed years of her life caring for her husband while he receives necessary medical treatment for a traumatic brain injury. My hands clenched in my lap. "Mrs. Parker has claimed," Sharon continued, "that her son, who is receiving excellent care at a state-of-the-art facility, is being held prisoner. She's accused her daughter-in-law, who visits him regularly and manages his medical care with dedication and love, of breaking into her home. Sharon's pause was perfectly timed. Your Honor, these are not the actions of a woman capable of managing a 40-acre ranch and significant assets. These are the actions of someone who needs help, protection, care. She presented medical notes from routine checkups, each one twisted to support her narrative. A forgotten dentist appointment became evidence of cognitive decline. A question about medication dosage became confusion about basic health management. My asking about Daniel became paranoid fixation on her son's whereabouts. Sharon called Jessica to the witness stand. My daughter-in-law moved with careful grace, playing to an audience. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so sickening. Ms. Parker, Sharon said gently, can you describe your relationship with your mother-in-law? Jessica's voice was soft, pained. I love Olivia like my own mother. After my husband's accident, when he suffered that terrible brain injury, she's been my rock, my support system. Lie, smooth and practiced. But over the past year, I've noticed changes. She forgets conversations we've had, accuses me of things that never happened, gets confused about dates, about bills, about basic daily tasks. Jessica's eyes filled with tears, actual tears. I'm so worried about her, Your Honor. I just want her to be safe, to get the help she needs. My stomach turned. Sharon called two of Jessica's friends as character witnesses, polished women who testified with concerned frowns. Yes, we've noticed Olivia seems confused. She's mentioned things that didn't make sense. We're all so worried about her well-being. By the time Sharon finished, the courtroom felt heavy with carefully constructed fiction. Jessica was the devoted daughter-in-law. I was the confused, declining elderly woman who needed to be protected from herself. Then Maria Ortiz stood, and Jessica's confidence flickered like a candle in wind. Maria's voice was calm, calculated, surgical. Your Honor, Olivia Parker hasn't lost her mental capacity. She's discovered a criminal conspiracy. And Miss Parker, she gestured to Jessica, is attempting to silence her the same way she silenced her husband. Objection. Sharon's voice cracked like a whip. Judge Crawford didn't even glance at her. Overruled? Continue, Ms. Ortiz. Maria opened her laptop, connected it to the courtroom's display screen. These are security recordings from Mrs. Parker's home, installed by her late husband 3 years ago as a precaution. The screen flickered to life. My kitchen materialized. The same room where I'd baked cookies with Sophie and Jacob just weeks ago. The timestamp showed November of last year, a Tuesday afternoon. The camera angle showed the kitchen door. And then Jessica entered. The courtroom went silent. On screen, Jessica moved through my kitchen with purpose, not checking on me, not concerned about my welfare. She went straight to the filing cabinet, the one where Robert had kept our financial documents, pulled out file after file, photographed each page with her phone. 4 minutes later, she was gone. Your Honor, Maria said, this is from November 14th. Mrs. Parker was at a cattle auction that day. Ms. Jessica Parker entered her home without permission and photographed confidential financial documents. She clicked to the next video. Robert's study, different date, same pattern. Jessica rifling through files, photographing tax returns, property deeds. December 3rd, Maria narrated. Mrs. Parker was at her doctor's appointment. Another video, the basement. January 9th, another, the living room. February 23rd, the videos kept coming. Different dates, different rooms, same systematic invasion. Jessica searching, photographing, violating the home Robert and I had built. The courtroom murmured. Spectators leaned forward. Jessica's face had drained of color. Sharon scrambled to her feet. Your Honor, Miss Parker had a key. She was concerned about her mother-in-law's welfare, checking to ensure bills were being paid, the house was being maintained. Maria cut her off smoothly. Welfare checks don't include photographing financial documents and rifling through private papers, counselor. This is calculated intrusion. Ms. Parker was searching for something specific. She turned to face the bench directly. Your Honor, the truth is that Daniel Parker is not incapacitated. His guardianship was obtained through fraud, and we can prove it. The courtroom went absolutely still. We have medical evidence from facility staff showing that Daniel Parker is fully lucid, aware, and capable. We request that Daniel Parker be brought before this court for an independent psychiatric evaluation. Sharon exploded. Objection. This is outside the scope of these proceedings. Daniel Parker is severely impaired. Transporting him would cause unnecessary psychological trauma. Judge Crawford's gavel came down once, sharp as a gunshot. Ms. Caldwell, the judge's voice was steel wrapped in ice. If Daniel Parker is as impaired as you claim, an evaluation will confirm that. If he is not, then we will have very serious questions about how this guardianship was obtained and maintained for 4 years. She turned to the court clerk. I am ordering Daniel Parker brought to this courthouse immediately for evaluation by a court-appointed psychiatrist, Dr. Alan Foster, who is standing by. The clerk nodded and left the courtroom. Judge Crawford's eyes swept the room. We will recess until 2 o'clock this afternoon. At that time, Dr. Foster will present his findings, and Daniel Parker will be given the opportunity to speak if he is able. Her gavel came down. Steel on wood. Final as a door closing. The 2 hours between that gavel and 2 o'clock felt like 2 years. Maria Derrick and I sat in a small conference room down the hall from the courtroom. None of us ate the sandwiches someone had brought. Derrick paced, his hand never far from his weapon. Maria reviewed her notes for the 100th time, and I sat there, hands folded in my lap, trying not to think about what Daniel must be feeling right now. 4 years in that place, and now suddenly being transported to a courthouse. To face the woman who'd locked him away. To face me, the mother who'd failed to see the truth. He won't blame you, Derrick said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. How do you know? Because I've worked cases like this. The victims never blame the family who didn't know. They blame the people who lied. Maria looked up from her notes. Olivia, when Daniel takes that stand, and I believe he will, it's going to be emotional. For both of you. But you need to stay composed. The judge is watching everything. I understand. And Jessica's lawyers will try to discredit him. They'll claim false memory syndrome confabulation coaching. We need to be ready. We have the recordings, Derrick said. We do. Maria's smile was sharp. And they don't know about those yet. At 1:30 we returned to the courtroom. The gallery had filled. Word had spread. This wasn't just a competency hearing anymore. This was something bigger. I saw reporters in the back rows. Cameras outside being held back by courthouse security. Jessica sat at her table with her lawyers. Her face was a mask, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. The way her fingers gripped the edge of the table. At exactly 2 o'clock, Judge Crawford returned. Bring in Dr. Foster and the patient, she ordered. The side door opened, and my son walked in. They'd brought him in a wheelchair. Theater. Jessica's final attempt to sell the narrative of a broken man. But Daniel wasn't sitting in it. He stood beside it, one hand resting on the back. Steady. Alert. When his eyes found mine across that courtroom, I saw everything. 4 years of isolation, of imprisonment, of counting days and wondering if anyone would ever find out the truth. But I also saw strength, determination, hope. My son was still in there, still fighting. Dr. Alan Foster took the stand first. He was maybe 55 with silver hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. The kind of man who'd evaluated thousands of patients and couldn't be rattled by courtroom theatrics. Dr. Foster, Judge Crawford said, you've completed your evaluation of Daniel Parker. I have, Your Honor. And your findings, Dr. Foster didn't hesitate. Daniel Parker is fully lucid. He understands his circumstances, communicates clearly and coherently, and shows no signs of the cognitive impairment described in Meadowbrook Treatment Center's facility records. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Sharon Caldwell started to rise, but Dr. Foster continued, his voice cutting through her objection before it formed. He does not require a guardian. He should be allowed to speak for himself. In my professional opinion, his continued detention has no medical basis whatsoever. Objection. Sharon was on her feet. Your Honor, we must question Dr. Foster's methodology. Dr. Foster's credentials are beyond dispute, Ms. Caldwell. Judge Crawford's tone was ice. Sit down. She turned to Daniel. Her expression softened slightly. Mr. Parker, do you understand why you're here today? Daniel's voice was hoarse from disuse, but every word rang clear across that courtroom. Yes, Your Honor, I understand. My wife filed for guardianship 4 years ago, claiming I was incapacitated. I understand she's now trying to do the same thing to my mother. He paused, his gaze steady. And I understand it's time to tell the truth. Judge Crawford nodded once. Please proceed. Daniel took a breath, and my strong, brilliant son told his story. 4 years ago, my wife and I argued about money. I had a trust that my father had established before he died. Protective provisions. Withdrawal restrictions designed to preserve assets for our children. His voice was steady, objective, the tone of someone who'd had 4 years to rehearse these words. Jessica wanted me to break those restrictions, to withdraw the principal immediately for what she called investment opportunities. I refused. She became aggressive. We were standing near the top of the stairs in our house. She pushed me. No drama, no embellishment, just fact. I fell 12 steps. I woke up in the hospital with a head injury, confused. By the time I was lucid again, maybe 72 hours later, she'd already secured emergency guardianship. The courtroom was silent. Absolutely silent. She told the doctors I was hallucinating, that I'd become violent and attacked her first. Daniel looked directly at Jessica, who sat frozen at the defense table. I tried to tell the facility staff what really happened. Dr. Pierce dismissed it as post-trauma confabulation. He said memory distortions were normal after head injuries, that I couldn't be trusted to know my own mind. His hands gripped the wheelchair. I tried to send messages out, letters, emails when I could access a computer. All communications were monitored. Anything that contradicted the official narrative was intercepted. His voice cracked slightly, but he pushed through. I've been in prison for 4 years, Your Honor, locked in a facility under false pretenses, while my wife systematically drained my accounts and rifled through my mother's home searching for documents that would let her control everything. The ranch, the trust, all of it. Tears ran down my face. I didn't care who saw. Daniel's voice grew quieter, but no less powerful. I watched my children grow up through staged video calls. If I didn't smile, didn't pretend everything was fine, the calls got cut short. The next visit would be delayed. It was conditioning. I missed Sophie's first day of school. I missed Jacob losing his first tooth. I missed birthdays, holidays, everything. He looked at me then, and I saw the same boy who used to follow me around the ranch, who'd learned to fix fence posts and drive a tractor before he was 12, who'd told me he wanted to make us proud. I want my life back, Daniel said quietly. I want my children back, and I want my mother protected from the same fate Jessica planned for her. Sharon Caldwell exploded to her feet, her composure finally shattered. Your Honor, this is a textbook example of false memory syndrome. Traumatic brain injuries often cause patients to construct elaborate narratives to explain their condition. This is confabulation, not testimony. But before Judge Crawford could respond, Maria Ortiz rose, with the calm precision of someone holding the winning hand. Your Honor, she said, her voice cutting through Sharon's desperation like a blade. There is one more piece of evidence, 2 recordings that will erase all doubt about the truth of Daniel Parker's testimony. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the courtroom. The first is a recorded confession from Theodore Sullivan, the attorney who helped Ms. Parker draft the fraudulent guardianship documents 4 years ago. He admits on tape to conspiracy to leaking information that led to the murder of a witness and to sabotaging Mrs. Olivia Parker's legal defense. The courtroom erupted again, but Maria's voice rose above the chaos. The second recording is from Ms. Jessica Parker herself, captured just weeks ago in a conversation outside this very courthouse, admitting to the guardianship fraud and discussing how to extend her control to Mrs. Olivia Parker's estate. Jessica's face had gone white as bone. Sharon Caldwell looked like she'd been struck. Maria nodded to Derek, who approached with a laptop and portable speaker. Your Honor, Maria said, we have 2 recordings. The first is the confession of Theodore Sullivan obtained during interrogation with law enforcement present. She pressed play. Ted's voice filled the courtroom. Panicked, broken, desperate. I helped her draft the guardianship documents 4 years ago. I knew about the trust Robert had set up, knew exactly what Jessica needed to bypass it. She paid me. God, she paid me $280,000 over 4 years. A pause, ragged breathing. I leaked Brian Cooper's information, the delivery driver. Olivia told me about him in confidence, and I told Jessica. He died the next day in a car accident that wasn't an accident. I knew what would happen. I knew. I sabotaged Olivia's case, destroyed the backup USB with evidence, filed discovery motions on the wrong forms deliberately. I was tasked with ruining her defense at this hearing, making sure she looked incompetent, confused. Jessica had leverage on me. My son, he was in trouble. She threatened to have him arrested if I didn't help. And she paid me. I needed the money. Another pause. I never thought people would die. I swear I never thought... But I was weak. And I'm so sorry. The recording cut off. The courtroom was silent. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. Sharon Caldwell's face had gone ashen. Your Honor, Maria continued, her voice steady. Theodore Sullivan has accepted a plea deal and is cooperating fully with authorities. He has admitted to complicity in the murder of Brian Cooper, a whistleblower who attempted to expose this conspiracy. She paused. But there's more. Yesterday, during a brief recess in preliminary hearings, my investigator Derek Stone had a conversation with Ms. Jessica Parker in the hallway outside this courtroom. Maria gestured to Derek. Texas is a one-party consent state. Mr. Stone was part of that conversation and legally recorded it. This recording captures Ms. Parker discussing this guardianship fraud in her own words. Maria pressed play again. Jessica's voice came through the speaker, different from her testimony, stripped of the careful, concerned tone she'd used on the witness stand. This voice was cold, calculating, furious. You should have signed what I needed, Olivia. You should have stayed confused and compliant like I planned. Derek's voice neutral. What are you talking about? Daniel was never good enough, never ambitious enough. When he fell down those stairs, I saw an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To protect my children's inheritance from his inadequacy. To control everything the way it should have been controlled from the start. A bitter laugh. Ted should have handled you. I paid that man enough over the years. But you kept digging, kept asking questions. You forced me to take steps I didn't want to take. What steps? Do you know how much money is in that trust Robert set up? Millions. He was smarter than I gave him credit for. Building in all those protections. But there are always other ways to access money if you're patient. If you control the right people. The recording ended. The courtroom was dead silent. Jessica sat frozen at the defense table, every drop of color drained from her face. Her carefully constructed mask had shattered completely, leaving nothing but the truth she'd orchestrated everything. Sharon Caldwell tried to stand, tried to mount some kind of damage control, but Judge Crawford's gaze pinned her in place. The judge's face was granite, fury barely contained beneath years of judicial discipline. I've heard enough. Judge Crawford's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. The guardianship over Daniel James Parker is hereby terminated, effective immediately. She turned her gaze to Jessica, and I saw no mercy there. Ms. Parker's petition regarding Olivia Parker is dismissed with prejudice. It cannot be refiled. Mrs. Olivia Parker is found to be fully competent, and this court apologizes for the distress this proceeding has caused her. Judge Crawford's voice grew harder. Daniel Parker will be discharged from Meadowbrook Treatment Center today. Immediately. Furthermore, I am ordering an immediate investigation into Jessica Morrison Parker for guardianship fraud, financial exploitation, conspiracy, and complicity in attempted murder. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. But the judge wasn't finished. I am also ordering an immediate investigation into Meadowbrook Treatment Center and all affiliated facilities operating under Silver Point Holdings. This court has reason to believe these facilities are involved in systematic guardianship fraud and money laundering. She looked directly at the federal agents Derek had positioned in the back of the courtroom. I am referring this entire matter to the Federal Bureau of Investigation for a full investigation into potential organized crime connections. Judge Crawford's gavel hovered. Ms. Parker, you are hereby ordered to surrender your passport immediately and remain within Travis County pending criminal charges. If you attempt to leave the jurisdiction, you will be arrested. Her gavel came down like thunder. This court is adjourned. The sound reverberated through the courtroom, final as a door slamming shut. Jessica sat motionless, her world collapsing in real time. Sharon Caldwell leaned close, whispering frantically, but Jessica didn't seem to hear her. She stared straight ahead, seeing nothing. Across the courtroom, Daniel's eyes found mine. Relief, exhaustion, and beneath it all, something I hadn't seen in 4 years. Hope. I crossed the aisle without thinking, without caring about protocol or procedure or who was watching. Daniel stood from this wheelchair Jessica had forced him into, and I pulled my son into my arms. We both cried. Neither of us cared who saw. "You're free," I whispered against his shoulder. "You're free, son." "I know," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "I know." Maria appeared at our side. "Mrs. Parker, there are reporters outside. FBI wants to debrief you both, and we need to arrange for Daniel's immediate release from Meadowbrook." "Can we have a minute?" I asked. She smiled. "Take all the time you need." Derek stood guard at the door, keeping everyone else out, giving us this moment. "I'm sorry," I said to Daniel. "I'm so sorry I didn't see it, that I believed her lies. Mom," Daniel pulled back his hands on my shoulders. "You didn't know. She's a professional liar. She fooled everyone. But I should have known. I'm your mother. I should have felt it. You found me." His voice was firm. "That's what matters. You found the truth and you fought for Mem." That evening, as the sun set over Austin, painting the sky in shades of gold and red, Jessica Morrison Parker was arrested at her home. 2 FBI agents, flanked by Travis County deputies, led her out in handcuffs, while neighbors watched from their porches. The charges read like a catalog of cruelty: guardianship fraud, financial exploitation, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, money laundering. It was the beginning of justice. But for us, for Daniel and me, for Sophie and Jacob, for everyone who'd been caught in Jessica's web, it was the beginning of something else. Healing. The FBI raids happened simultaneously across 3 states. At exactly 6 p.m., Mountain and Central Time, federal agents stormed 7 facilities operated by Silver Point Holdings: Meadowbrook in Austin, Sunset Vista in Albuquerque, Desert Horizons in Phoenix, 4 others spread across Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. The operation was massive, coordinated, precise. Derek called me that night with the results. 89 patients freed, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Ages 34 to 81. Every one of them a victim of guardianship fraud. 89 people. 89 families torn apart the way mine had been. 89 Daniel Parkers locked away while the world thought they were somewhere else, or thought they were incapable, or simply forgot they existed. Financial seizures total $47 million, Derek continued. Properties, vehicles, offshore accounts, everything frozen. The FBI is calling it the largest guardianship fraud takedown in federal history. The arrests kept coming. Dr. Howard Pierce, conspiracy, fraud, unlawful detention. He flipped within hours, testifying against everyone above him. 12 individuals with cartel connections. 3 facility administrators. More indictments coming daily. And Rebecca Boyd's case, the journalist who died trying to expose this very network, was reopened. Pierce identified the cartel hitman responsible, the same crew that had killed Brian Cooper. Rebecca's family would finally have answers. Brian's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. We drove back to the ranch that night, Daniel in the passenger seat of my truck, staring out at the hill country he hadn't seen in 4 years. He didn't say much. Neither did I. Some things don't need words. When we pulled up to the house, the porch light was on. I'd left it burning the way Robert always had, a beacon saying, "Come home." Daniel stood on the gravel drive for a long moment, just looking. At the barn where he'd worked on his first car. At the pastures where Robert had taught him to ride. At the limestone bluffs catching the last light. "I thought I'd never see this again," he said quietly. "You're home now." I put my hand on his shoulder. "You're home." We walked inside together, father and son, and closed the door on the darkness behind us. Sophie and Jacob were waiting on the porch when we arrived. They'd stayed with my neighbor during the hearing, but I'd called ahead, told them Daddy was coming home. Jacob saw Daniel first. "Daddy?" He flew across the gravel arms wide, 6 years old and barely remembering the man who caught him now, but somehow knowing this was right. Daniel caught him, buried his face in Jacob's hair, and sobbed. Sophie stayed back, 9 years old, cautious, testing reality. Daniel looked at her, tears running freely. "Hi, sweetheart. I missed you so much." Sophie's lip trembled. "Are you staying?" "Yes." Daniel's voice broke. "I'm never leaving again." She studied him for a long moment, then walked down the steps, slowly, deliberately, and fell into his arms. All three collapsed together beneath a sky turning purple. I stood by the truck, watching my son hold his children, and saw Robert's photograph through the window. We brought him home. Spring arrived in the hill country 6 months later. Bluebonnets carpeted the fields in waves of purple and blue. The ranch felt alive again. Daniel worked beside me in the west pasture, replacing fence posts the way we had before Jessica, before Meadowbrook, before everything broke apart. His hands remembered the labor even when his mind still carried the weight of 4 stolen years. The rhythm helped. Dig, set, tamp, move on. He was still thin, but color had returned to his face. The nightmares came less often now, maybe once a week instead of every night. He laughed more easily, though shadows still crossed his eyes when he thought no one was watching. Healing, I learned, wasn't linear. It was slow and uneven, full of small steps forward and the occasional step back. One afternoon I found Daniel in the barn with Jacob, bent over the same red toy truck Daniel had played with as a boy, now missing a wheel and coated in decades of dust. "Hold it steady, buddy," Daniel said, carefully turning a small screwdriver. Jacob watched wide-eyed. "You're really good at this, Dad." Daniel's eyes filled, but he smiled. "Grandma taught me when I was your age. We fixed everything together." I stood in the doorway, watching my son teach my grandson the same lessons Robert had taught him. The circle held. Sophie found her own way back. Therapy twice a week helped, working through what her mother had done, what she'd carried for 4 long years. Her drawings changed. Now she drew the 4 of us together. No walls, no black lines separating family, just us standing close. Both children saw a counselor to help them understand that their mother was in prison. The truth came in pieces, gentle and age-appropriate, but never hidden. We settled into routines. Breakfast together every morning, pancakes on Saturdays, eggs and toast during the week. Daniel helped with homework at Robert's old table, patient even when Jacob's math made no sense and Sophie's spelling broke every rule. Dinner was sacred. We shared our days, Jacob's playground stories, Sophie's art projects, the fences we'd repaired, the cattle we'd moved. And bedtime stories were a ritual Daniel never missed. 8 months after the hearing, Jessica was sentenced. We didn't attend. Daniel decided early, I don't need to see her. I need to be here. So we stayed on the ranch that day, working the land, eating together, choosing healing over closure that required her presence. Derek called that evening. 18 years federal prison, he said. No parole for 12. The judge's words had been severe. Jessica had imprisoned her husband, terrorized her children, helped destroy dozens of lives through criminal conspiracy. She'd shown no remorse. She blamed everyone, Derek said. Daniel, Ted, you, everyone but herself. Ted Sullivan got 8 years minimum security. His testimony had been critical in dismantling the network. Sharon Caldwell faced disbarment proceedings, and Dr. Pierce received 15 years. When I hung up, Daniel looked at me. It's really over. Yes, I said. It is. That night, Sophie asked the question we'd been expecting. Grandma, why did Mom do bad things? Daniel knelt beside her bed. I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes people make terrible choices, but you're safe now. Grandma and I will always protect you. Always? Sophie's voice was small. Always. Jacob's question was simpler. Is Mom coming back? It'll be a very long time, Daniel said gently. When she does, you'll be grown. You'll get to choose if you fall return to the hill country. A full year since that Saturday morning at the farmer's market when Brian Cooper pressed a package into my hands and whispered, I can't keep this secret anymore. 1 year since my world shattered and rebuilt itself into something stronger. The air carried the first hint of coolness. Fireflies beginning their dance across the fields. Golden hour painting the limestone bluffs in amber and rose. I sat on the porch with Daniel, Sophie and Jacob playing in the yard. Jacob was building something elaborate with sticks and rocks. 7 years old now, growing so fast. Sophie sat beneath the old oak tree, drawing, her sketchbook full of family portraits. Happy ones. I never thanked you properly, Mom, Daniel said quietly. For not giving up. For believing when you couldn't even speak to me. For fighting when accepting the lies would have been easier. I squeezed his hand. You're my son. Giving up was never an option. We sat in comfortable silence, watching Sophie show Jacob her drawing, watching him laugh at something she said, watching life continue the way it should have all along. Derek had visited last month, brought news of the ongoing trials, 47 million in assets recovered, being distributed back to victims and their families. The Brian Cooper Truth and Justice Fund, established with recovered money, would provide scholarships for his daughters and help other families fight guardianship fraud. Rebecca Boyd's name had been cleared, her investigative work validated, her family finding peace, 89 people home with their families, 89 victories against a system that had tried to steal their lives. Do you ever think about the what-ifs? Daniel asked. What if Brian Cooper hadn't found you? What if you'd ignored the warning signs? Every day, I admitted. But I also think about what Robert used to say. We can't change the past, but we can honor it by choosing better in the present. Daniel nodded. He would have been proud of you. He would have been proud of both of us. As the sun set over the hill country, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, I thought about everything we'd lost. 4 years, 1 month, and 12 days. Sophie's childhood years with her father. Jacob's memories of his dad. My time with my son. Those were gone forever, stolen by greed and lies and a system that allowed predators to thrive. But I also thought about what we'd gained. Truth where there had been lies. Justice where there had been corruption. Freedom where there had been imprisonment. And 89 families who got their loved ones back. Brian Cooper's death hadn't been in vain. Rebecca Boyd's sacrifice mattered. And my refusal to accept comfortable lies over uncomfortable truth had changed everything. Sophie called from the yard. Grandma, come see what Jacob built. I stood, Daniel beside me. Together we walked across the grass to where our grandchildren waited. And I thought about Robert's letter, the one I still carried in my pocket. Fight for our son. You're stronger than you think you are. He'd been right. I was stronger. We all were. Because love, stubborn and fierce, had fought back. And love had won.